Have you ever noticed that you get hotter wearing black clothes in the sun? I have. See, what happens is that even though when we imagine the sun we think of it as orange or yellow, most of the light it emits is actually white light in the visible spectrum. What's even cooler is that white light is actually a combination of all the colors of the rainbow. The color people see when we look at things is actually an indication of what colors of light have been reflected from it. So for example, red apples reflect red light and absorb the other colors. When we see something that is white, it is actually reflecting all the colors of light. Absorbed light is what makes things hot in the sun, so if no light is absorbed, then the object doesn't heat up either. So what about black stuff? Black is the result of an object absorbing all colors of light, which is why you'll probably get a little sweaty if you wear a black shirt in the sun. Now that we know the relationship between colors and feeling hot in the sun, I want you to do me a favor. Imagine a countryside. When I think of one, I think of grass, a lot of it, some trees and maybe a few buildings, but mostly a lot of greenery and open space. Now imagine a city. I think of tall buildings, streets, and sidewalks. Everything is really close together in the city I imagine. Let's compare the colors of these places. The countryside has a lot of different shades of green, while the city has mostly dark colors. The skyscrapers, streets, and sidewalks are all really dark. We talked before about the relationship between colors and temperature. The difference in color between urban areas and the countryside is what causes a phenomenon known as an urban heat island. Urban areas around the world are markedly hotter than surrounding rural areas, which is why the phenomenon has island in its name. I want to tell you about some other reasons that urban heat islands exist. Plants have another cooling effect besides being light in color. Plants can actually cool areas through a process known as evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration cools the environment, kind of like how humans cool down by sweating. The water released in sweat contains a tiny little body heat, so when it evaporates, you're left with less heat than before. The same thing happens when plants transpire. The water released by plants contains a tiny bit of heat, so when the water evaporates, the area is actually a little cooler than before. In urban areas, there aren't many plants, so there is more heat hanging around on the surface, making it hotter. Here's another thing that makes cities hotter than rural areas. Remember how all the buildings were really close together in the city? Well, it turns out that this arrangement of buildings can also make cities hotter, especially at night. See, during the day, the sun heats up the surface of the earth, and then at night, while the sun is gone, the surface cools down. In cities, though, the buildings are so close together that there is nowhere for the heat to go, making the cities have a hard time cooling down. What can we do about urban heat islands? Well, planting trees within urban areas is a good place to start. Another way to keep cities cooler is by constructing roofs that are light in color and less likely to store heat overnight. These three aspects of urban heat islands are by no means all the reasons urban areas are hotter than rural areas. People should care about urban heat islands for a lot of reasons, including how they affect public health. Naturally occurring heat waves are dangerous, but are even more dangerous in combination with urban heat islands. So, the next time you find yourself feeling really hot while wearing a black shirt in the middle of a big city, you'll know why. I suggest finding a white shirt and taking a trip outside the city to get a break from the heat.